Let's say you're standing on a bridge. Beautiful day, no danger, no reason to feel anything but calm. And then out of nowhere, a thought appears. What if I jumped? You didn't choose it. You didn't want it. But it's there, crystal clear, vivid, almost like a suggestion. And now here's the real question. Does that thought say something about you, or is it just your brain playing its darkest trick? What we're talking about today is something almost every human experiences, but almost no one talks about out loud. Intrusive thoughts. The unbidden, disturbing, sometimes horrifying mental images your own mind generates without your permission. And spoiler, they don't make you dangerous. But why your brain produces them in the first place, that part is genuinely terrifying. Definition. What are intrusive thoughts? Let's get precise, because most people misunderstand this completely. Intrusive thoughts are unwanted, involuntary thoughts, images, or impulses that appear in your mind without invitation. They're usually disturbing, shocking, or completely absurd. And here's what matters most. Regardless of their content, they are not your brain trying to take control of you. Research shows that over 90% of the general population experiences these thoughts at some point in their lives. A mother holding her newborn suddenly pictures dropping it. A surgeon, mid-procedure, is briefly hijacked by a completely irrelevant, dark thought. And that feeling you get on the edge of a tall building that pulled toward the void, the French actually have a name for it. L'appel du vide. The call of the void. So why does this happen? The answer reveals something unsettling about the brain's architecture. The same system designed to protect you is also perfectly built to horrify you. Why the brain does it? Evolutionarily speaking, your brain is a threat detection machine. The prefrontal cortex, the part you use to reason and make decisions, acts as a filter. But that filter isn't perfect. Under certain conditions, it misfires, and instead of suppressing worst-case scenarios, it projects them loudly. Neuroscientists call this default mode network activity. When your brain goes idle, not meditating, just genuinely unoccupied, it starts talking to itself. And that internal monologue isn't always pleasant. Here's where it gets stranger. Research consistently shows that intrusive thoughts tend to attack whatever you value most. A devoted parent gets thoughts about harming their child. Someone deeply opposed to violence sees violent imagery. Someone religious gets blasphemous intrusions. This isn't random. It's a byproduct of how the brain processes what it labels forbidden. The more meaning something carries, the more you care about it, the more aggressively the brain's alarm system flags anything that threatens it. The dark irony, that horrifying thought that just crossed your mind, might be direct evidence of how deeply you care about your values. The suppression paradox. The harder you run, the closer it gets. Now things get really interesting. In 1987, psychologist Daniel Wegner ran a simple experiment. He gave participants one instruction. Don't think about a white bear. You already know what happened. But the more shocking finding came after. Once the suppression period ended, participants thought about the white bear significantly more than they had before the experiment, more than if they'd never been told to suppress it at all. Wegner called this ironic process theory. When you try to suppress a thought, your brain simultaneously activates two systems: an operator that attempts to push the thought out, and a monitor that continuously scans for the thought to check if suppression is working. The monitor keeps activating the very thing you're trying to avoid. So by saying, "Don't think about that," you have effectively engraved it into your mind. This is a breakthrough finding for anyone who experiences intrusive thoughts, because fighting the thought, trying to annihilate it, makes it stronger. Your brain interprets the struggle as a signal that the thought is a genuine threat, and threats get priority processing. The more you resist, the more real it becomes. The OCD link, where's the line? So when does this cross from normal into something clinical? Obsessive-compulsive disorder. OCD is widely misunderstood. Most people picture someone repeatedly washing their hands. But one of its most common subtypes, known as purely obsessional OCD, involves no visible compulsions at all. No rituals, no behavior patterns you can see from the outside, just a mind that has turned into a war zone. The difference between a normal intrusive thought and OCD isn't the thought itself. It's what happens next. The thought arrives, disturbs, passes. The person recognizes it as a bizarre glitch. The thought arrives, and the person interprets it as meaningful. If I thought this, it must mean something about who I am. Then comes the desperate attempt to neutralize, undo, or disprove it, and the cycle never ends. Researchers call this interpretive error thought-action fusion, the mental collapse of the boundary between thinking something and doing it. I thought it, therefore I must have wanted it. It's wrong, but to the brain, it feels absolutely real. And that gap between what the brain feels and what is actually true is where the real horror lives. The darkest types, where the mind actually goes. Now we get to the part no one talks about. Research has mapped intrusive thoughts into several major categories. Fair warning, these are uncomfortable. But remember, the whole point is that these thoughts are universal. Hearing them named is how you realize you are not alone and not broken. The first category, harm thoughts. Thoughts of harming yourself or someone else. Jumping, swerving, dropping a child. These are the most common intrusive thought category and the ones that cause the most shame. The second, taboo sexual thoughts. Unwanted, inappropriate, or disturbing sexual imagery involving people who are completely off-limits. Research suggests these occur in over 50% of the general population. The third, religious or blasphemous intrusions. For deeply religious individuals, thoughts that directly assault their faith, profane images, sacrilegious impulses appearing in the most sacred moments. And the fourth, identity intrusions. Existential thoughts that make you question who you are at the core. What if I don't actually love the people I think I love? What if none of this is real? What all four categories share. They attack whatever the person holds most sacred. And that is not a coincidence. That is the threat detection system misfiring at exactly the targets it was built to protect. The more forbidden, the more vivid. The more you care, the more the brain will show you exactly what you fear most. So what do you do with all of this? Research shows that the most effective response to intrusive thoughts isn't elimination, it's acknowledgement without engagement. Noticing without believing. This is a thought, I am not this thought. That single distinction, what clinicians call diffusion, has measurable effects on the brain. When you stop treating the thought as a threat and start treating it as noise, the monitor stops sounding the alarm. The loop breaks. But there's a deeper truth here. Your brain evolved to keep you alive, and in doing so, it built a system so sensitive that it sometimes manufactures terror out of nothing. That doesn't mean your brain is broken. It means it's working, just too hard, in the wrong direction. The darkest corners of the mind are also the most human ones. And the next time that uncomfortable thought surfaces, watch it. You don't have to believe it. If you're new to Fear Wired, this is exactly what we do here. We explore the science behind what scares us, the psychology behind fear, and the strangest, most disturbing corners of the human mind. Subscribe because the next video takes everything we just covered and pushes it one step further. And I'll warn you now, after you watch it, you'll want to leave the lights on.